Hi, and welcome to Simple Health, where we make staying healthy simple and stress-free. I'm your host, Esmeralda Zamora, and I'm here with our Jose Torres to talk with the president of the Keep Climbing Foundation. But before we get into that, Jose, thank you for joining me. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Esme. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm glad that we are finally in the fall season
hmm
and it's feeling great outside, but it's important to stay on top of our health, right, Jose?
Yeah, and just like we talked recently, any little movement is good movement in the short term and in the long term if you keep being consistent.
Yes, especially right now as we get closer. We're recording this on November 24th, so as we get closer to Thanksgiving, it's important to get that body moving after eating all that food, right?
Right.
Before we get started, we always like to start with a quick introduction to what Simple Health is and why we do it here at KXAN. So, Jose, can you give us a quick intro?
Sure. I like to think of it sometimes as telling you the untold stories of Central Texas, where I had no idea of all the medical treatments and research, new research that is going on here in Central Texas. A couple of days ago, I spoke to a couple of doctors who are doing some research to hopefully one day cure a certain part of cancer. So that's promising news that they were sharing with me, and we'll share that with you in a later segment. But we try to bring you stories about that to also bring you hope if maybe it's you or someone who is dealing with some kind of health challenge. We like to bring that hope to you to let you know that there are resources, whether it's treatment or maybe it's a facility that helps and helps you with emotional support. So we try to bring those stories with you and also help you simplify all of the research talk and make it easy to digest.
Yeah, keep health simple. And like we mentioned, we have a special guest in studio with us today, Mr. Ryan Kelly, president and founder of the Keep Climbing Foundation. Thanks for joining us, Ryan. This is your second time in the studio. How does it feel to be back?
It feels great. I love the new studio and I love what y'all do here in Austin.
Well, we are glad that you are here with us. Ryan, what is the Keep Climbing Foundation?
Yeah, absolutely. So in 2015, I had this idea and it came off seeing a movie trailer for a movie called Everest. And I came into the office the following day with this great idea. I said, hey, y'all, we're going to go climb a mountain and we're going to raise money for children battling cancer. I'll take care of all the costs so that every dollar we raise can go directly towards this incredible nonprofit, Friends of Kids with Cancer. And didn't have many takers. In fact, a lot of folks were like, Brian, what are you doing? You've never camped before. You've definitely never climbed a mountain before, and you're terrified of heights. But all that said, we accomplished the mission. I went out to Mount Rainier, and we climbed Mount Rainier and raised about $14,000 for Friends of Kids with Cancer. And that was our now known as our first annual climb for the kids. Every year, regardless of what we have going on in our lives, we make a point to go out and climb a mountain to raise money for the fight against childhood cancer. And it's been 11 years now. So that's kind of the background. We've climbed some amazing mountains all around the world. And I think to date, we've raised about $575,000. All the money that we raise goes directly towards these causes. And this year, with our 11th annual Climb for the Kids, every dollar that we raise will be used to directly pay medical bills for families with a child going through cancer treatments. And we have a great partnership with Dell Children's Hospital right here in Austin. And I can tell you right now, there are a lot of families out there going through what is probably the toughest time of their lives. And they're also stressed out and worried at night about how they're going to pay these bills that are piling up on the kitchen counter. So with this climb, paying these bills directly for these families, I would opt to say that it's probably the most important fundraising effort and the biggest climb we've ever done.
And to give viewers some perspective of why there's a big need and why you're so passionate about this, you were telling us earlier about the cost. What is the average cost that a family takes on?
Yeah, and that can vary, obviously, depending on what area of the world that you're in, what area of the country you're in, the treatment offered at that hospital, and of course, what type of cancer that your child does have. But on the average, if your child is diagnosed with cancer, you can expect up to $250,000 in the first year just for treatments. And a lot of folks do have insurance and there is Medicaid, but there's still those co-pays. And as we were discussing earlier, Let's say your child is diagnosed with cancer in November, and the first $5,000 is up to the patient's family to cover. And then January 1st, it's another $5,000 deductible they have to meet. But even more than the deductibles, a lot of these treatments aren't covered. And when your child is diagnosed with cancer and going through that, you'll do whatever you can to help that child. I mean that, whatever you can do. So a lot of these treatments are out of network. Unfortunately, insurance companies aren't covering them. I've been in a lot of these families' homes over the years and gotten to know them very well. And I can tell you, every time I go in the house, there is always a stack or a file cabinet or nil envelopes, whatever it might be, across the kitchen table or the kitchen island. And these bills are piling up and they're on the parent's mind every night when they lay in bed. So for us to be able to come in, do this climb, raise money, and to directly pay those bills that are keeping them up all night offers a peace of mind that these families need while they're worrying about their child and the treatments that they're going through.
That is so awesome that that is the focus that you had when going in and visiting these families, because not everybody is thinking that way for these families. It's important someone step up and do that work for them. This is the 11th climb that you are doing for the children. How have you begun preparing for this specific climb? I know this one is pretty tough, right?
Yeah, none of them are easy. And, this kind of fits really well for health, right? Because I think a lot of folks think we just choose a mountain and we go out and climb it and we ask people to donate money and that's it. But in all honesty, behind the curtain, the training, the logistics, the planning starts months in advance. And for this specific climb, we started planning the logistics in March of this year. And it's, a lot of these mountains, especially this one, they're in very remote part of the world, right? And it's very difficult to get there. And especially when you're taking a team of climbers to these places.
Look at that.
So
That's wild.
You have to go through all of these logistical, planning just to get to the mountain. And then training. I stay fairly fit. I believe in moving every day, whether that's running, jogging, walking, or in my gym, or riding a bike, just something to stay fit. But as we get closer to these climbs, that training really has to intensify. And about 2 months out from a big mountain climb like Pico, you're training 7 days a week, if not 2 times a day. And a lot of that training is running for me, get that cardiovascular as good as I can, that VO2 max as high as I can to help me with that higher elevation. I also do weight training throughout the week just to kind of break that up. And a lot of that weight training isn't the fun, sexier stuff like biceps and this and that. It's those horrible squats, lunges, Brazilian split lunges, just the things you don't like to do, but you need that as you take these steps up the mountain. We also do a training climb prior to going on a big mountain climb. Last week, we were out in Leadville, Colorado. We were climbing Mount Massive, the tallest mountain in Colorado at 14,421 feet.
Wow.
But that's just a good preparation for us. It's a high altitude training that we just can't get here in Austin, Texas. And hopefully some of that elevation sticks with us, but it's definitely worth it just to practice getting up these big mountains. So I'm doing running, weightlifting, a lot of squats, lunges, all those things. Heck, sometimes I go out to Hill Country Galleria just to get to the parking garage, and go up and down 5 flights of stairs with a heavy 50-pound weight vest. We're biking throughout the week just to kind of mix up all those activities. And then right before we leave on a big mountain climb like this, we'll do a pre-climb somewhere out in Colorado that can get us up to a pretty high elevation. So a lot goes into these climbs, both with the preparation months in advance, and then the training about 2 months in advance, really turning the dial on that so that we can hopefully achieve the summit of this mountain.
You're going to have to invite Esme and I to one of your training workouts. I'm sure I'm speaking for Esme, but I'm sure she'll do it.
Yeah, he's volunteering me.
I'd like to have the two of you on one of our climbs.
Oh, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
They're not always big mountain and they're not always technical. Sometimes we do smaller stuff throughout the year. We've hosted through our Keep Climbing Foundation, we've hosted some companies on the Appalachian Trail for a few nights and done some other things like that. But they're all for the same mission, and that's raising dollars and awareness. That specific one on the Appalachian Trail, we raised a lot of money for St. Jude Children's Hospital, and it was amazing. to get people out that had never seen the Appalachian Trail and spend a few nights camping, hiking, and covering some ground there. So they're not all big mountain climbs, and they're not all super technical, but our annual climb for the kids sure is.
I'm sorry, Esme.
I was going to ask a question, but if you have one, you can go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. This specific climb, is there anything you had to prep differently than you have in the previous climbs?
Yeah, it's a great question. With the high altitude, as we had kind of mentioned, just preparing for that. And it's hard to train in Austin at 500 feet or whatever our elevation is, depending if you're in hill country, maybe you're at 600 feet. But Austin's relatively low. So the big thing here is that 18,500 foot summit. And once you cross over, for me, I can speak, everybody's a little different. But when I get over about 12,000 feet in elevation, I really start to feel it. So that one's been on my mind quite a bit. It's not the first time. We've done two others. One, Cotopaxi was 19,500 and Chimborazo was over 20,000 feet. So out of the 11 years, this will be our third high altitude climb. So, but the elevation definitely is top of mind. And again, it's not just the physical demand, it's the mental demand. And you hear people discuss or talk about this mental factor of anything really in life. But specifically, when you're going up a climb this high, your body, or your mind, I should say, is telling you it's time to stop. I mean, every step, you take a step, you breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, you take a step, in through your nose, out through your mouth, and you're doing that for hours on that summit push. And that whole time, I can promise you, the only thing really getting into your mind is it's time to stop. You've hit your peak. You can't get any higher. And it's this mind game that's constantly going. And what I do is I just think about the kids. I think about the families that we're helping, all the families I've met along the way through the journey. And that's what keeps me going to the top of these mountains. So I practice as much as I can for that VO2 max, to get my lungs and body and organs working really well on low oxygen. And that's probably one of the bigger trainings besides, as we mentioned, those horrible squat workouts in Brazil. those are pretty tough. They're no one's favorites, but critical as you're going up this high elevation to the summit.
I hate burpees.
Yeah, burpees are key too. I have a former back injury from an event that I did about 10 years ago, and that definitely does come into play here. Going up, it's okay, but coming down with that weight in your backpack and everything else, it hits my lower vertebrae pretty hard. And so I just have to bring some Advil and a steroid just in case I have an issue like that on the mountain, because it'd be pretty hard to get me off a mountain like this if I can no longer walk because my sciatic nerves are pinched and all that. So yeah, burpees, definitely, but I do have to watch some of that high impact stuff because it could trigger it. And when we get this close to a climb, you have to slow down the training. I was watching a movie, Alex, it's a climber, and it was Free Solo is the movie where he free solos a big giant wall in Yosemite.
Wow.
And he talks about this training and how dialed in they get. So you ramp your training up as you go. But then about a week before the big climb or the big event, whatever you're doing, you have to start to bring it back. You want your body, when you show up to a big climb or a big adventure like this, to be craving those miles, to be craving those workouts, not exhausted. So we're definitely in that spot now, 8 days out from leaving, about a week out, where these workouts will come down substantially. So today, instead of running 8 miles, I ran 2. But I don't want to get injured. I don't want to do anything to my body. I'm in a good spot. And I want to come off that peak of workout so that my body's kind of craving that high, calorie burning workouts by the time I start up the mountain.
Well, for runners who might be watching, it sounds like almost like a running training program. You hit the wall in those long runs, and then when you're training, you hit that mild peak of training, and then you kind of like taper down, which it seems like what you're doing.
It's exactly right. Yeah, exactly like a marathon training or a half marathon, whatever it might be. Yeah. Your longest run's usually a week or 10 days out from that event, and then you start tapering down.
So with running, and you already mentioned this, you hit a wall. How long does that wall last? I know you mentioned that you keep the children and the families in your mind, and that keeps you going. But like in your journey of climbing, when does it hit and when does it end?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, I guess it ends at the summit, but a different emotion takes over on the summit. A big mountain like this is a few days to get to the top. So you're up at high camp, the highest point you'll camp at. And for this specific mountain, that's probably a little over 15,000 feet where we'll camp that night. And then we'll wake up at roughly midnight, depending on the weather. So try to lay down around 6 in the evening, sleep if you can on some rocks until midnight. And there's very little sleep that really happens, but at least you're relaxing. So at midnight, it's time to, get suited up, put on all the puffies, put it all on, get the crampons, the spikes on, get your ice axe, get your harness, just get ready to start moving up that mountain. Mm-hmm. And then you're really pushing from, I would say in this climb, from about midnight or 1 in the morning. And we hope to hit summit at sunrise, give or take, around 6 or 7 in the morning. So that 6 hours is pretty brutal. It's the toughest part of the climb. And when you're doing a big volcano like Pico, it's steepest at the top when you're the most exhausted and your mind has been running in circles for hours as you work your way up and watch everybody else turn around, but you have to keep going. But when you get to the summit, and I remember specifically down in Ecuador as I hit the summit of Cotopaxi with my team, and that's 19,500 feet, I just collapsed and kind of had this moment where I blacked out. I was on the ground, still tied, roped in with my team. And I was just out for about 2 or 3 minutes because of that climb, that push up, and just making it to the top. And then you come to life, and the adrenaline just really kicks in. And you're like, we're here, we did it. And you get pretty excited, and you try to get some pictures for people that have donated and for the families that you've met throughout the journey, and you're trying to do some stuff. But then that adrenaline kind of changes to, now I have to get down. Right? And then you have to start working your way down that mountain. And in all honesty, that's probably the saddest part of all of my climbs is coming down, because you prepare for months in advance. You meet families that you're going to be helping. You beg everybody to donate $25, $50, $500, whatever they can. You're doing this long journey. And then the summit is kind of the end. Mm-hmm. And after all those emotions of getting to the top and being on the top, coming down, you have this feeling that it's over. And I don't know how to describe that, but it's kind of this letdown, feeling almost. So I will say that the climb is the climb, but the real journey starts months in advance and it builds up. And when you get to the top, it's over. And it's kind of a sad climb down, because all that is built up and the adrenaline on this summit that you made it, and then coming down, the work's almost over. Yeah, I can't describe it, but it's this feeling of emptiness, because raising money and training and logistics, everything's been part of your life. And then at the summit, it ends, right? For a time at least. So a lot of different emotions going through your mind. But again, I just focus on the families that we're helping and these kids and these children that I've met along the way, and some have not survived. And I keep them in my head when I start to think about stopping. It's like, no way, I'm not stopping. I'm going to the top. If I physically can, I will. That brings up a good point. We don't always make it to the summit. We've had some objectives where maybe half the team makes it or a third of the team, but when you get up that high, especially in these high altitude climbs, one little thing can go wrong and that will stop you. Everything has to be hitting on all cylinders. So for instance, we were on a 20,500 foot climb down in Chimborazo in Ecuador, and I didn't make it to the summit. I had to stop at about 19,000 and change, which is almost equally as of a letdown. A couple of our team members did make it to the top, but in my case, I was having an issue with one of my laces on a boot, and that boot being open and somewhat exposed and 20 degrees below zero temperatures ended up causing me severe pain. And there was no way at that high of an altitude my foot was going to warm back up. So it was the safe thing to do to turn me around and head down. But the other part of the team continued up and made it. And that's also one of the great things about teamwork and having a team with you is that if something goes wrong, whether you don't have the right mittens or gloves or gear or something, you twist an ankle, which happens, you're on ice and you have spikes and an ice axe and you're working your way up for hours. Quickly, a wrist or an ankle injury could stop it. But as a team, we've always made it to a summit. And it's just not always the full team that makes it. But this year we feel confident, as I guess we do every year, but we feel confident. Full team's going to the summit, and we have a big mission ahead of us.
You're speaking it into existence.
That's right.
It's a mantra. You gotta,
That's right.
gotta speak it into existence.
That sounds like something my wife says every night to me. Yes.
So going back to the families that are chosen to receive the money that you fundraise, how do you choose those families?
It's very difficult because there's absolutely no way we can help them all. And maybe if we had $1 billion, we could really touch everyone's lives, but we can't. So we encourage people to go to the keepclimbingfoundation.org. That's our website, keepclimbingfoundation.org. We'll be putting up a form that people can fill out. But in the meantime, you can just shoot us a message and tell us about the situation you're in right now. Tell us about those bills that are piling up, the ones that are top of mind. And then we go as a board and we say, okay, we've raised $40,000 and we have 15 families we want to help. So we can do $3,500 for this family. We could pay $5,000 for this family. This family, we're going to do 10. And we just kind of try to break up what we raise with this climb and spread it out to help those that need it the most and to help pay the bills that are really the ones that are preventing maybe nights of sleep and everything else and their child's treatments. So it's difficult, of course, when you don't have endless resources, but we try to help as many as we can and make a big impact in that.
How are those conversations with the families and the kids that you get to meet?
Yeah, they're always emotional, full of emotions, of course, where everybody obviously is so grateful. But we don't want that. You feel guilty, right? You're sitting there with these families, whether in hospitals or at their home or at the Ronald McDonald House or wherever, you have that common ground that you get together and talk, or when you're going to present a check or what you're going to do. And when they get so appreciative and they're crying and you're making this impact, you feel this sense of guilt, like, whoa. Like,
I don't want to make you cry.
There's no need for that. Like, you have so much going on. This is the least that we can do. Mm-hmm. And they get that. And it's always emotional, My 3 children are super healthy, and I'm so over the moon grateful for that. But I can tell you firsthand, it is devastating, not just to a family when the child is diagnosed with cancer, but it's the whole community. It really is. And a lot of these families live a little bit on the outside of a bigger city. And you'll see as you're driving into these towns, the local restaurants or the auto parts stores, whatever it might be, the signs outside will be about that family and, supporting that family. So childhood cancer doesn't just affect, of course, the child and that family and the extended family, but the entire town. It really does. And it's tough. And we do the little part that we can to help out with that and to, take some of that stress off of the plate, right? And so they can focus on their child and treatments.
Has there been some success stories with these families that you talk to?
Yeah, absolutely. Some of these children do have finish lines, without going into which cancers are worse than others, but some are more treatable, like a leukemia, which they're not all, but, some there is a finish line. And we've celebrated and seen those kids grow over the years, so there's definitely been some success stories along the way. And even if the other happens and if the child does lose their life, you can take a little comfort knowing that the family appreciated what you did, whether that was paying some hospital bills or that was donating a first pitch opportunity for a baseball game or tickets to a hockey game or a football game or whatever we can do as a foundation to help those families just to create some lasting long memories, So yeah, it's tough work but we enjoy the fact that we do something to try to help with these families and what they're going through.
Nice. And for anyone that wants to donate for this year's climb, where can they do that?
Yeah, please go to our website, the foundation website. It's pretty easy. It's keepclimbingfoundation.org, keepclimbingfoundation.org. And you can learn all about our foundation there. We also produce many documentaries on every one of our Climb for the Kids. So the first one we didn't, but gosh, this is going back 11 years. It wasn't as easy to film on iPhones and GoPros then. I think the first year was a blog post, but every other year after, even with an old Razor flip phone, or some years we bring a photographer or videographer with us on big climbs. But
do they have to learn how to climb too?
They do. They have to be part of the team, right? And they have to do all the training. So it's not as easy as one might think to find a videographer that's ready to go out there and do that. And I'm sure we could pay videographers that do this all day for big climbing expeditions. But as a foundation that we donate every dollar we raise. So every dollar that comes in for donations of this climb goes out. We keep zero. So that makes it difficult to pay a big video team to go out with us when we can't. So a lot of that video work is volunteer. But that said, we've created some incredible mini documentaries on our climbs, and we usually weave a child's story in and out of our climb to a summit. And some of our films have, been included in film festivals. We had one 2 years ago in the San Antonio Film Festival that was amazing. But the real winners of these films are those children, and they pass them around, and you'll see the YouTube views go way up, on certain things, and we know that they're sharing them with each other through that community, which is really cool. This year's climb, I am the videographer. So
wow.
We'll see how we do. But it's not my first year. And I just know to, even when I don't want to, get that camera out and get some vertical and some horizontal.
Yes.
Everybody wants some quick stories and reels, but that horizontal always, is part of that longer form.
Yeah.
We did one climb with this beautiful girl named Elizabeth, for Elizabeth, I should say. And that film really touched a lot of hearts. Elizabeth, unfortunately, did not make it through her battle with cancer, but she was such an inspiration to so many people when she won a big beauty pageant in Illinois. And instead of just taking that crown or tiara and putting it on a shelf, she used that for advocacy, her remaining part of, years of her life.
Wow.
And that film is on our website, and you can see Elizabeth's story there. And she really wanted to keep the advocacy going even after her death. So in her final days, she filmed for us. And we wove a lot of that in her messaging and our big Alaska Denali climb. And that one just comes to mind as I can't, I still, all these years later, when I watch that film, I can't make it through without bawling. But she was such an inspiration. And I remember that. And then I get my stuff back together and, finish the film and give some talks about that. But yeah, Elizabeth was amazing. So these films are all showcased also on our foundation website.
You have me tearing up. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing all that goes into these fundraisers that you put on each year. Again, we're going to have all of that information on our website, KXAN.com. For anyone that is interested, we'll have that link to the foundation's website so you can donate or watch those videos like Ryan mentioned. But Jose, I think these are all the questions I have. Was there anything else you wanted to ask before we wrap things up?
I wanted to say two things. One's a question, and then I'll say one thing. Tell us about this mountain, like where the location is, the challenge, and what you're looking forward to.
Yeah, so Pico de Orzibia is in Mexico. It is the tallest mountain in Mexico at 18,500 feet and change. And it is also the third tallest mountain in North America. So third tallest mountain in North America, about 18.5. It's a very remote part of Mexico, and it's a supervolcano. It's not active, so although when you're up there and it's freezing cold, you might hope for a little lava, warm it up. But it's dormant, and it's this beautiful cone-shaped of a volcano that just hits the clouds. And we'll fly to Mexico City on December 2nd, and we'll spend the first night or so in Mexico City, just climatizing at 7,500 feet. We'll do some hikes outside of Mexico City, and then we'll travel to Pueblo City, which is a very small city in the mountains, a very historic town. And we'll meet our guides there in Pueblo and do a pre-climb. Our pre-climb mountain is over 17,000 feet. So taller than anything in the U.S., of course. And then we'll start working our way up Pico, which will be a good solid 2 days of climbing on Pico to get to the summit. So if all goes well, we'll hit the summit of Pico on the 7th, which is a Sunday. These big mountains with the glaciers on top, because they're not just rock all the way up, it's glaciers when you're that high. And these glaciers, could be anywhere from several hundred feet to several thousand feet deep of ice. And they crack and they open up. Yeah. And there's crevasses and ladders on a lot of these. And so you're always on a rope team as you're working your way up in case someone punches through a snow bridge and starts falling into a crack that's several hundred or thousand feet. And so there's a lot of that risk on Pico. I think the top of Pico, because of the volcano, will be a little rocky, but we'll be traversing up a glacier to get to the top. So Pico de Orzibia is the mountain, 18,500 feet, full of glaciers up top. And we hope to summit sometime on Sunday. Also on these big mountains, you have to go for the summit in the middle of the night. And that's because when the sun comes out and it starts hitting the ice, things move. And I was on a mountain climb one year where a glacier, it was the mid of the day, and we were traversing fairly low still, not very low, but not near the summit. And a small rock, probably about the size of a baseball, came tumbling down, and it literally almost took off a climber's full leg. He had a compound fracture, both bones poking out of the skin. Sorry to go that far.
Oh my gosh.
Helicopter, of course, rescue. And that was just a small little rock that had come free, might have been, working its way free up there for years. But that day when that sun hit it, it popped right out of the ice and really did some damage to a climber's leg. So you do what we call an alpine summit on these big mountains. And that's why we start at midnight, because you want to get up there before the sun comes up or right when it's coming up. And then also when you're up that high, the weather comes in the afternoon. So you definitely don't want to be on these mountains coming down or going up at that altitude in the middle of the day, because that's when the weather can go from a blue sky summit, beautiful summit, everybody's celebrating, you're working your way down, and then you just happen to look up and you're like, black clouds coming in, storm, it's changing fast, and you're several hours from any type of protection or any hut or any old tents or camps that you could get into. So you don't want to be exposed up on top of those mountains when the storms do come in. So we do those late night, early morning summits, and then not a lot of time on the summit. It's get down, get the content, make a call if you have a satellite phone and are able to, but then just turn around and start working your way down.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for the community that you're building and all the joy that you're also cultivating. And hopefully people out there will watch this and be motivated to donate.
Yeah, every dollar matters. And I mean that. I know there's a lot of people out there that could donate $500 or $1,000, but there aren't many, right? And times aren't as easy right now on folks as they have been in the years past. So a $25 donation really helps make an impact. 25 is great, 50 better. Just please give what you can. 100% of our donations that we raise go directly towards these families. And as a full 503c nonprofit, it is completely tax deductible. So you'll get a form at the end of the year about your donation, and you can write that off on your taxes. So kind of check all those boxes. And I just encourage you, just take a few minutes, visit keepclimbingfoundation.org, learn about our foundation, and make a donation if you can. It's for the kids.
Yes, it's for the kids. Thanks for joining us, Ryan.
Thanks for having me, both of you. Thank you.
Jose, before we wrap things up, any last words?
Well, I think we're going to join Ryan for one of his workouts.
Maybe we should. Or a climb.
We'll
I think
see.
you should go be a photographer for one of the climbs.
Yeah, I'm going to have to work on my strength, but yes, that sounds cool.
If you can fly a drone, you don't have to go up as high.
Oh,
good point.
Good point. Well, thank you for joining us, Jose and Ryan. It was so fun to chat here on KXAN Plus. I do want to remind everyone that if you want to see more great conversations just like this one, make sure to stream us on KXAN Plus. It's free to download on your TV app, your favorite TV app, and it works on any streaming device. So don't forget to check us out on there or KXAN.com for the latest news. Thanks for joining me, you two, and we will see you next week, Jose.
Alrighty.